Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fixfest. So it's really exciting to, first of all, start a panel earlier than on schedule, which is probably the first time I've ever done it in my life. And we are incredibly happy and excited and grateful to have this all-star Olympics team of people fighting for the right to repair around the world here today. You'll notice that there is no one formally representing the UK on this panel, although obviously as a moderator representing Restart, I will be talking about the UK, but that's because we want this session to inspire everyone in the UK about what's happening, what's exciting, what's coming up with Right to Repair around the globe. So that then, this afternoon, those of you that will choose to be here for the session back here at 3:30 on what's next for Right to Repair in the UK, we can make use of all the inspiration that came from this morning and turn it into future action for this country. So without any further ado, I proceed to just welcome everyone here. And we'll get started by going straight to the person that for the first time for me ever said the word right to repair. This was 2017 at the very first Fixfest. And it was Kyle Wiens from iFixit who happened to be at that first event and is back here in London 8 years later. Kyle, the floor is yours. What's happened in the last 8 years? Are we making it?
I think we're making it. Yeah. Okay, so, I mean, I started this whole thing. I mean, I started iFixit in 2003 because I was trying to fix my laptop and I was looking for the repair manual and I couldn't find it anywhere on the internet. And I did a little more research as to why, and I learned that Apple's lawyers had sent legal threats to everyone that posted the service manual online. And I said, that's not okay, that shall not stand. And so at the time, as a college student, I did the best I could, which was I wrote my own manual, I put it online, and Apple became the first electronics company to have open source repair information online for all of their products. But it wasn't because they did it, it was because I did it for them or to them, depending on how they feel. And we've been at this ever since, right? But we realized very quickly, I mean, we were writing repair manuals as fast as we could. We couldn't keep up with everything. We said, how do we get to a world where everyone in the world has access to service information for every product they have? And as big as the iFixit community is, we can't keep up. We have to bring the manufacturers into the fold. And I probably spent 10 years asking nicely, saying, please, will you post your repair manuals, and got nowhere. And then we decided it was time to stop asking nicely and just demand the right to repair. And that's what we've been doing since.
And what are the key achievements at a federal level in the US that you're seeing happen?
Yeah, I mean, it has been systematic. So building on the success that, we stand on the shoulders of giants. The originators of right to repair laws are in the automotive sector. There are automotive right to repair laws going back to the 70s in the US and Europe. And now in the US, we're looking at building on that at both the state and the federal level. We have seen the most success in the US at the state level, and we are working on the federal side of it. If you think about right to repair broadly, you have the fundamentals we need is the ability to repair. We need the legal capability to fix things, and we need the practical ability. So on the practical side, that means parts, tools, and information. And then a design that can be fixed. And so as we look at the global landscape, and really the strategy and what you're going to hear in terms of progress is the result of a decade of careful strategy identifying that when it comes to product design, it's very hard to pass policy impacting product design in the United States. We do not have a culture that is willing to do that. But in Europe, this is much more possible. And our friends at HOPA and elsewhere have done a great job advocating to that. But in the US, we're really good at intellectual property, and so a lot of the intellectual property laws that form the foundation for the framework that we're dealing with are created in the US and exported elsewhere, and that's what Anthony has been working on in Canada. So we're right at the culmination of realizing, I think, the end of phase one, which is we passed a number of state laws around the U.S. enshrining the ability to have access to parts, tools, and information, and we're going to keep going federally.
Great. Speaking of state laws, we are very excited to have Meghan from US PIRG here with us. Can you tell us what's exciting from a state level perspective happening still in the US?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, I'm here on behalf of US Public Interest Research Group. We're a federation of state-based public interest advocacy groups. And yeah, as Kyle sort of mentioned too before, so since 2023, US PIRG has been part of a coalition including iFixit and many others, and we've helped to get lots of right to repair laws passed in states across the country. Currently, right now, 8 states have passed laws protecting the right to repair for consumer electronics. 2 have passed laws protecting the right to repair for mobility equipment, so that includes wheelchairs, and 1 has passed the right to repair for agricultural equipment. And yeah, so this was before I started on staff, but you know, we passed the first right to repair law to protect consumer electronics in New York State in 2023. This was a huge landmark. It was sort of a narrow bill in scope because it only applied to devices first sold after 2023, and it didn't apply to appliances. But since then, we've been able to do more and sort of widen our scope with every other bill passed. We were able to protect appliances in Minnesota and California. And then after I started on staff in 2024, the bill that we helped to pass in Oregon also banned the practice of parts pairing. So with every bill that we pass, you know, there's more that we feel like we can do. Also this year, we helped pass the right to repair in Texas, which is the first time that's passed in like a red-leaning or Republican-held state. So really huge. Because of the success of this campaign too, we've also launched like grassroots, what we call canvassing campaigns in a number of states across the country. So this is where we literally go door to door, knock on people's door and talk to them about the right to repair and ask them to take action on it. We did this in New Jersey, so that was an office that I actually helped run this summer, as well as Illinois, sorry, I'm just blanking on the other ones, Virginia, North Carolina, and a couple other states as well. So we think there's a lot more to be done, too.
The U.S. political situation is interesting.
That's why we need hope, right?
But allow me to say, at least our corner of this, we've done a very careful job of keeping right to repair firmly in the center, encompassing all sides. In the U.S., the agriculture sector, the farmers, tend to be deep red, very conservative. You know, we've passed laws in progressive, very blue states who passed right to repair in Texas this year, basically unanimously. So we have been very, very careful to be completely politically inclusive. President Trump, before he got elected, said if he was elected as president again, ice cream machines in McDonald's would be fixed again, right? So, which we're working on. That is going to take a federal copyright bill, which Anthony and I are going to talk about.
And in fact, in our Olympics of Right to Repair, next to the US, we go straight to Canada to hear what is exciting happening in Canada. And we have Anthony Rosborough, who is president of CanRepair, who will tell us more about it.
Yes, thanks so much, Hugo. Yeah, so thanks everyone for having me. So in Canada, as Kyle mentioned, our challenge with the right to repair, obviously being so neighborly with the United States, gives us the opportunity to kind of reflect on some of the policy decisions, particularly in relation to intellectual property, and think of maybe a bit of a different path forward. So one of the big challenges for us has been in relation to the Copyright Act and TPMs, sometimes they're referred to, or digital locks. In the past couple of years, we've passed 2 bills amending our Copyright Act to provide new exceptions, allowing folks to break those locks or to circumvent those digital locks for the purposes of repair, maintenance, diagnosis, and interoperability. So we've got 2 bills that have just amended the Copyright Act to do that. They're limited in scope to some degree, and I won't get into all of the crazy technicalities of in which ways they're limited, but they offer a really important release valve for independent repairers and kind of help ease that fear of liability. I'm not sure if all of you are familiar with TPMs, but there's been some notorious cases, right, where circumventing these digital locks attracts enormous liability. And given that a lot of the products that we have in Canada, and I believe elsewhere, like are imported, so we're sort of dealing with a lot of, on the recipient end of these products. And so we want to provide our domestic industry with the opportunity to repair those things. And another big kind of achievement for us in Canada was a Act. So we currently have just enacted a new provision that makes it clearer that refusing to provide the means of diagnosis or repair, is the language, is a refusal to deal under our competition law. So what does that mean? It means that if a company refuses in an anti-competitive way to provide parts, tools, information, or software that an independent business needs, a competitor potentially who's providing repair services, that could be found as an anti-competitive act. So those are like the big policy wins, but of course sprinkled throughout that, there's been at the provincial level, like our province of Quebec has taken a really bold leadership in mirroring kind of what's going on in the EU with a very strong repairability by design and imposing positive obligations on manufacturers to provide parts, tools, information, and software. So we've got things happening at the provincial level as well in Canada, but we've seen really bold leadership with intellectual property and competition so far.
Thank you. And you mentioned Europe, so we're coming back closer to home, and I'm handing over to Cristina Ganapini, coordinator of Right to Repair Europe, and a wonderful Restart team member, to tell us more about what should we be excited about what's been happening in the EU.
Yes, I would say the political situation in the EU is also interesting. However, we have managed to secure some wins. We have been working meticulously over years on eco-design regulations, product by product, that basically oblige manufacturers to design their products in a more repairable way, to provide spare parts and to provide repair manuals, but only to some extent. Every win was really, really hardly worked for. Thomas in the room, for instance, for one, knows about the endless meetings, endless discussion. There is fierce industry opposition to every single one of them. So we have repairability requirements, so eco-design requirements on about a dozen of products. And we have a right to repair directive, which is also enshrining the right to repair into consumer legislation. So it is now enshrined in EU consumer legislation. It is now on the agenda. We will have to update it, review it. And I would say this is a win because it is on the agenda. It will stay on the agenda now. And the Right to Repair Directive introduces a new right for consumers to demand repair from manufacturers also after the legal guarantee has expired. Again, this is limited only to the dozen of products that are currently covered, and there are other limitations, but this is a first. We've never had it before. And as of July 2026, the member states will have to transpose the directive into national law. So if you live in France, Germany, the Netherlands, any EU member state, you will hopefully start to feel it as well. Some more good news are going to come as of 2027, a little bit more patience there, but it's coming, and it is user replaceable batteries for portable devices. This was also something that we had to work very hard for. There was fierce opposition again, because as I'm sure you have experienced many, many times at repair cafes, many gadgets were or are still designed in a way where you cannot take out the battery, which is, of course, absolutely absurd because it makes for disposable electronics. And we are putting a partial halt to that as of 2027. In addition, manufacturers will have to sell batteries as spare parts for a minimum of 5 years. So they cannot just sell it to you and they say, oh, no, sorry, we don't produce that battery anymore. And another big novelty is that they will have to sell that spare part for a reasonable price. Now, the big question, the million-dollar question is, what is a reasonable price? And if you want to discuss this at length, just join our session at 11:30 in the council chamber. We can discuss and more and more. And one last good piece of news that I wanted to share, because this is actually in force now. It concerns smartphones and tablets. One of these eco-design regulations that we worked so hard on is the eco-design minimum repairability requirements in the eco-design of smartphones and tablets. And this has entered into force as of June 2025. So if you see any smartphones or tablets that are being sold without a repairability index telling you how repairable they are, that's illegal. And so I thought that I would share that with you guys. And also, as of now, for new models, you have the right to demand spare parts and software updates for a minimum duration. And
Thank you.
join our session to know the details.
Thank you, Cristina. So there's a lot going on in Europe, and within Europe there is one country that's been at the forefront, inspiring the rest of Europe in many ways. And so we are very excited to have Manrique from HOP to tell us more about the best policies that have come out of France.
Well, hi everyone. Yeah, so actually it's very interesting to have Cristina talking right before me, because it is all very linked. As we are part of the European Union, of course, we have to deal with like European legislation, of course. So thank you very much for the Right to Repair Coalition that helps us a lot and makes an amazing work on that. But to come back to France, so we are actually at the forefront in terms of repair for notably one legislation, which is what we call it in French AGEC law, which is entire waste for a circular economy law. And basically, what does this law says? It says that you have to put an index, so directly linked to the European one, of course. So there are two types of indexes: the repair indexes and the durability indexes. And those two are HOP advocated a lot for it to be relevant. So there are a lot of different things to consider, and negotiations are very hard in order for French consumers to have an aggregated note between 1, it could be 0, but it never happened, of course, but between 1 and 10. And this note basically gives you an idea of how repairable, if it is a repair index, repairability index, or durable your product is, knowing that the durability index is composed of the repair index as well, but there are just more things into the second index. So these are actually a very nice tool for consumers to be informed of the repairability of their products. And they also go, like this AGEC law is also very important to us in terms of repair because of the repair bonus. So there have been several other countries trying to implement those kind of bonuses. And we have to deal in France with the repair bonus that is directly linked to the EPR schemes, for those of you who are familiar with it. So it's extended producer responsibility schemes. And basically it makes producers responsible of taking care of recycling their products. And through the repair bonus, they also have to, to pay for people to be able to repair their products. So you have a certain amount of money that is for you, that is available kind of for you to repair your product. So there are a lot of questions on what amount is the good amount in order for people to make to go towards more repair. But it is still a good tool, and it makes repair the responsibility of producers and not consumers.
Thank you. So let's continue our journey around the world. And I wanted to give the floor to Mathew Lubari, who is from South Sudan and Uganda. What does the right to repair mean when you are in the middle of East Africa?
Thank you so much, and thank you everyone for having me here. I'm so privileged to sit in front of you and also share something about the right to repair in Africa, or especially in East Africa. Generally, in Africa, there is still no legislation, general legislation that is on the right to repair. Although in South Africa, there is a right to repair legislation which is only focusing on automotives, right? But on general kind of electronics, it's not, there. And where I work as community creativity for development in East Africa, we have been doing a lot, especially on promoting community repair cafes to promote the idea of repair culture. Although repair culture has been traditionally there in Africa, with many people doing repair for commercial purposes, but not as helping communities or raising issues that are related to repair. And one of the challenges is that there are no forums that brings together repairers from the different African countries, or even within East Africa, right? And it's all. I'm so happy that I was able to join the global right repair movement, where I am now deeply taking the messages from around the world back to the people who are in Africa and trying to educate them about what repair means. Because if you can't repair your own device, I think you don't own it, right? When you're restricted, then it's not yours. Although you get your money to buy it, and at the end of the day, you're not, you don't have the privilege to play around with it, right? So it becomes very difficult. And currently what we are doing is that we are forming a right repair movement, which we have started with the preparations, putting together a document and reaching out to individuals from the different African countries. So far we have reached to individuals in Kenya, in Ghana, in Cameroon, within Uganda, South Sudan myself, although I represent both countries, two countries like South Sudan and Uganda. Maybe you might be wondering why. Yeah. I had been living as a refugee in Uganda since 2016. I was forced to flee my country. And that's where I got into the world of repair. Right? Although I was inspired by my father, who used to break his wristwatch and his radios that he loved while trying to repair it. So I was so challenged with that, and I taught myself when I was still 12 years. It's like, I think I need to learn repair to help him repair restore what he has broken, right? And including other challenges that I faced while growing up, trying to take my phone for repair and being charged a lot of money and not allowed to see how it's being fixed. So it gave me a great challenge. And I said to myself that I need to teach more people how to repair their devices. Right? So with this, the currently status is that we are building up the right to repair movement in Africa, which we have already reached out to people. And we are, next step is for us to register it as a legal entity so that we can do two things. One is push for policies, engage with policymakers and stakeholders so that we can policies can be put to protect repairers and also to push the agenda of right to repair, but also to create more awareness about repair through community repair cafes. And this, we cannot do it ourselves. We need support, and we need sponsorships for that.
Thank you, Mathew. To end this ideal global tour, we're coming to Australia, where Leanne Wiseman is not only a professor at Griffith University, but also runs or orchestrates the Australian Repair Network. What's happening in Australia?
Thank you, Ugo. Thank you for having me. Australia only has one right to repair law, and that is our automotive mandatory data sharing law. We love this because it's actually a mandated system where global car manufacturers must supply information to our independent repairers in Australia. Australia doesn't make cars, we service and maintain them, and it's a $1 billion industry in Australia. So we love that model. As Kyle said, Australia doesn't have a history of good design regulation, so we're way behind Europe and France. We look with envy at the repair label and the repair bonuses and the right to repair and the consumer right to repair. In Australia, it's very unlikely that we will get a consumer right to repair. We don't have a Bill of Rights in Australia. Our consumer law is not built to give consumers an individual right to repair. And in some senses, in Australia, if a consumer has a right to repair, they're basically suing a global giant. And in terms of equity of access to legal fees, etc., it's not likely to have a huge impact on elevating repair in Australia. Our government is more interested about cost of living, productivity, so we are really pushing and hoping for a right to repair at an industry and business level. Our agriculture, our farmers, our miners, military like the US. So we see getting that awareness in Australia will help ultimately our consumers to get stronger consumer rights like Canada. We're pushing for reforming competition law as well to try and regulate the overreach of manufacturers, but also tinker with our intellectual property laws of really creating the barriers. So we probably get the bronze, but if there's I don't know what colour goes beyond bronze, but...
You're pushing, and that's a start. So it always amazes me when I talk to all these folks, because you think you're getting it right and that we're making progress, and then you realize that the game is so long and so complex. It's a marathon because there's just so many aspects that need to align together, and one area can lead on one specific aspect. Clearly the EU is the only area where we can change the design of future products, looks like, but elsewhere we have to sort out copyright, then the appropriate funding systems, and also looking at how, many of you mentioned automotive as a positive example. Some of us might have experienced automotive as being problematic with new electric cars, all the technology in them being a problem for the future. And we're leaving behind all of the products that we haven't even mentioned, from medical devices to agriculture products and many more. So how come this is not happening, given that it's a bipartisan issue? In every polling we've seen, whether commissioned by Restart, iFixit, US PIRG, or CanRepair, there's about 80%, more or less, of the public that is in favor of right to repair. What are the challenges and how can we fix them? Easy question. Back to the US.
Yeah, this is uneven. Okay, so we're at the point now, we've gone from like an idea, now we've passed some initial policies. The question is, how do we get to mainstream adoption? Because nothing here matters until someone walks into one of your repair cafes with a toaster or a hair straightener and you can get the parts and the manual to fix it, right? None of this matters until we start to shift mainstream culture, and the default is you're going to fix it. No one throws away a toilet because it broke, right? Everyone in the world fixes a toilet, but most people throw away a phone when it breaks, when the screen breaks. No one throws away a car because they break the windshield, but we throw away a tablet when this. Okay, so we have to shift behavior there. So how do we get there? Well, if you take anything away from what we just talked about, is progress is complicated and uneven, right? We've passed repair laws in some U.S. states. We passed intellectual property reforms in Canada. It's uneven. So what we need all of you to do is to be the navigators for the community as we get into this complicated world. So, for example, in Minnesota, in the U.S. right now, we can get access. It's the only jurisdiction in the world. If you have like a business IT system, a server, a router, it's the only jurisdiction in the world where we can get that information. So if someone walks in to a repair cafe with a Dell server in Hackney, what we should do is find someone in Minnesota to ask for that information from Dell and get that information to you, right? So we can navigate this global landscape collectively because this patchwork of legislation can actually work in our benefit because these are global manufacturers having to comply. So you've made tremendous progress with batteries. Apple is not going to make a different iPhone in the US than they make in Europe. And so I have an iPhone 15 with a USB-C port thanks to all of you amazing people who mandated it. That's fantastic. That is huge, real progress. Now, the next generation of phones are going to have removable batteries. Apple's got this new electrically debondable adhesive they're rolling out worldwide. So as we make design progress in Europe, that's reflected worldwide. As we make information and parts improvements in the US, that will also be reflected worldwide. So the way that we combat the complexity is by embracing it, understanding what our rights are in different places, take advantage of the network that we have here, and start to ratchet it up. Because we have to go from like the concept of right to repair to the reality in our day-to-day lives.
Meghan, so on a day-to-day basis, how does this play out in terms of the push you're doing through canvassing, which I think is the first time I've heard someone canvassing for right to repair? It's a very exciting prospect.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that one of the challenges that we occasionally run into when campaigning for the right to repair, just among regular people, is kind of like a very understandable skepticism. I was recently canvassing for the right to repair in New Jersey this summer, and we met a lot of people. A lot of people are super in favor of what we're doing, super excited about the idea, but we still run into problems of people saying like, oh, well, even if you regulate these companies, like they're just not going to follow it, or they're never going to make anything more repairable. They're never going to want to do anything that's not, strictly profitable, and this cuts into their profits. So that's definitely a challenge we were running into. I think the way we overcome that is, we have lots of examples of many manufacturers changing their practices and making things more repairable and making more parts available as a result of these laws. Like in particular, Apple provides a lot more spare parts than they ever used to. But yeah, so I think that's one of the main challenges there. And then, of course, their skepticism is understandable because compliance with existing state laws does continue to be an issue. I was on a report I think a couple of months ago, or almost a year ago, where we just went to a lot of different companies and tried to request things like service manuals and spare parts, pretending we were from California or Minnesota, where they would have to give it to us. And many companies did not provide those materials. It was actually a story in NPR KQED, so the California version of NPR. We released this report and we called out a specific manufacturer for not providing the service manual. They replied and said, this is absolutely ridiculous. Of course we would provide that. And then the reporter themselves tried to request the service manual and did not get it. So I think that just goes to show that compliance with these existing laws can be a little spotty, but the way to overcome that is to do what we're doing and call them out, put that in the media, make sure that people know, hey, this law exists and these companies need to be following it.
Now that's exciting because differently from the General Olympics, that means we can all take part and push them. So I think it's a more democratic, accessible Olympics, so I like it. So Anthony, what are the challenges that you're experiencing in Canada, and how is CanRepair fighting?
Thank you, Hugo. So in Canada, we have the benefit of kind of watching everyone and thinking about how we might go ahead. You know, we're watching the European Union across the Atlantic, we're watching the United States, and we're trying to figure out for us what kind of makes the most sense. And what that does is it allows us to kind of evaluate different approaches to the right to repair, to consider strengths and weaknesses. And I think from that analysis, if you'll allow me to put on my law professor hat for a moment, I think one of the things that is a challenge for our movement as a whole, regardless of where you are in the world, is political sterilization. And when I say that, I mean, when we talk about the right to repair, we use the word right quite deliberately, and we can mean a couple of things by that, right? We could mean that it's a right in the sense that no one can prevent me from fixing my own things, so that would be like a negative right in constitutional terms. Or we can think I have a right to access parts, tools, information, and software. So there's some obligation of others to give me something to fix things. So we can characterize this right in different ways, and I think importantly we need to get the balance right, and we need to understand that on either side of that spectrum, all of these approaches are complementary. I think there's a risk that if we look at the right to repair as primarily a design problem or a governance problem, or as just that the right to repair is one component of a circular economy system, that we kind of risk in some ways giving space for capitalism to reinvent itself and to perpetuate the kind of unsustainability that got us here. So apologies for going down this road, but I'm seeing people's t-shirts that say that the right to repair is the right to rebel, or sorry, to repair is to rebel. And I think my caution is that if we view the solutions to the right to repair as primarily a technocratic problem, that we can solve this through changing, fine-tuning a business model or designing a product slightly differently, that we will lose the steam that our movement needs to actually accomplish a fully fledged right to repair. So that's, I guess, my sort of cautionary challenge is to not lose, I guess, sight of the foundations of the movement, which are to push back on systems of market control and market power that alienate us from the tools and devices that make our world.
Thank you. So moving to Europe, on a day-to-day basis, I experience via Cristina the problematic frustration of not managing to go faster at achieving right to repair. What do you see as the main challenges, and how is Right to Repair Europe as a coalition pushing back?
As I was telling you, I guess one of the main problems, one of the main limitations is the scope, the fact that we only have a few products, a few spare parts covered. As Kyle was also saying, it's patchy, it's not mainstream, it's not reaching everything. My smartwatch is not covered, your laptop is probably not covered, and we need something much more horizontal, much more general to cover everything. But there are good news in sight. Hopefully, thanks to all your data that all the repair cafes logged in, all the non-repaired products, all the unsuccessful repairs, we managed to put together a report that was really, really useful to convince the European Commission that most products are still not repairable and that we need more general rules. So we are really pushing hard for a more general approach. Of course, another huge problem is that in many cases, one could say, why should I bother, right? Why should I repair it if it's more expensive still in too many cases to repair it than to buy it new? And of course, this is a huge economic problem, and we have some ideas, some taxation and incentive solutions in mind, along with, of course, getting a reality check on spare part prices that would help. And then I would say one last point, which perhaps goes in the same, criticism of capitalism that Anthony was doing. There is such aggressive marketing happening, bombarding people, pushing new products, cheap new unrepairable products onto consumers. And here as well, I would say we need to get a grab collectively and to do better. But of course, it's a bigger problem.
In France, you're also experiencing new challenges in part also linked to what's happening in Europe, strangely. Can you tell us more?
Yes, of course, but actually a lot of things have been said, and I completely agree with everything that all of you said. It's just very what we are confronting to on a daily basis. But at a French level, I would say that one of the main problems that we have to deal with, actually, is the fact that repair is very linked to companies directly. What I mean is like our repair bonus, for example, is depends on the EPR schemes, as I told you. But the thing is, like the governance of the EPR schemes depend on companies because they are the one governing, no, but at the head of eco-organism, and all that you can hope for is basically linked to eco-organism when it comes to the repair bonus, for example. So the thing is like, okay, so we ask, like we have to deal with companies in order for like repair to be competitive, for consumers to have the information of such a tool, because, for example, we see in France that most French consumers, most French people don't know those tools. They don't know that the repair bonus exists. They don't really know what the repair index means. I mean, they know that it exists because they can see it. It is displayed. It is partly displayed because actually not perfectly, but it is partly displayed. They know that it exists, but they don't really know what is behind it, and they kind of have a hard time understanding and dealing with also the fact that marketing just tell them all the time. Okay, you have to buy this new thing, you have to upload, you have to have a whatever, but like they really, like marketing pushes you to overconsume, and on the other hand, you have just such a great repair index that we advocate for, and we really negotiate again for it to be ambitious. But the thing is like, yeah, but it is like there is a real problem in terms of communication with the tools linked to repair, and also with the fact that companies have a really, really big power, at least in France, in the fact that we don't communicate enough, and the public administration doesn't want to really deal with it because they're just like, no, just, okay, we passed the law, it's great, now it's on your hand, and it is really complicated to just make it work, even if we have great tools in France, but it is not enough, it is not always enough.
And Mathew, I wanted to follow with you because it's great that we are questioning the capitalist system and the growth system. We need to move towards a post-growth, if not a complete degrowth model for the way we use our resources. But in your experience, repair isn't just a nice to have. It's the only way. Can you share a bit more? What does it mean to actually repair in your context?
Thank you so much. Like I said, repair is not just fixing only the things that we have, but repair is so much more. Repair is connections. Repair is mental maintenance. Repair is social cohesion, right? Like in most African countries where countries has been or are still recovering from war damages, is that repair, brings communities together by act of interacting while fixing things. They get relieved of whatever happened and try to get into new life. So the process of fixing a broken things reflects to the process of healing broken relationships. In a way that when you see yourself restoring something that has been broken or faulty and bringing it back to life, it gives you a sense that you will also be able to reconnect with someone that you have fought with before, or whom you have conflicts with, right? So this is a very, very important thing that we have noticed. And the aspect of creating social cohesion, it's also something very important when it comes to repair, but not just fixing a broken thing, right? And the sense of mental maintenance, because a lot of people has been or are living in a traumatized situation, right? Like thinking back what might have happened to a relative that has been maybe killed or who died in the process while trying to escape the conflict. And when you reflect to that, when you're alone, you know, there's that emotional torture that comes. But in the process of preparing things and interacting with people in repair cafes, it gives a sense of rebuilding one's life and restoring, and having hope in life again, that one day things will be better. So that is generally what I can say.
Thank you. And finally, Leanne, what do you see as emerging in terms of hope from the Australian network, and how can the movement fight back with the lack of legislation?
I was going to talk about the challenge, but I can
But
do
please,
both.
both.
I think what we see is, and I don't know if you know, but in New Zealand they've just tried to pass a consumer right to repair and it was defeated. Australia and New Zealand are fairly small markets, obviously, around the world. And so the opponents that we see in Europe and the States are very present as soon as we raise our heads talking about a right to repair in our jurisdictions. But I think what we have tried to do, and working with our New Zealand colleagues, is we have tried to convince our environmental arm of government, so the various departments, about the waste concerns. And we were getting traction there for some time about circular economy and the importance of repair to a circular economy. There has been a general shift with the global kind of financial crisis that we are all facing. And now we are finding that we are getting more traction with our Treasury, with our economists, around productivity and cost of living crises. So we are really seeing more hope with our federal government when we talk to them about the importance of looking at someone's home and keeping everything in that home going for 1 or 2 or 3 years longer. Similarly, in our businesses and our industries, it's sending a very strong message. So our hope is, in terms of a productivity argument, that they will see the benefit of repair. We're hoping to get our ag machinery into our mandatory data sharing legislation, and then consumer electronics as well. And that is cost of living savings to individuals, to our businesses and to the Australian economy, and not overlooking the environmental benefits, but at the moment, and probably in the next 5 to 10 years, it's a financial desire to save money. I think that Australia might move on repair, and we're happy to go that way. We can pivot easily wherever they want, however they want us to package it, we'll go there.
Thank you. We'd like to open to questions from the audience. I'm sure you'll have so many, and we're limited by time, but please raise your hand and one of our colleagues will come with a microphone. Mine.
Hi, thank you so much, all of you. I'm Stevie Ray. I I volunteer at a repair cafe in Didcot in Oxfordshire, and I've started a company called Fairflow Energy. But what I want to know is regarding in France, the index for repairability and durability. Who does the scoring for the products. So you've got your index, and that can be nicely defined, but then how do you make sure that the score a product ultimately gets is fair?
It's a very good question, because actually on Monday I'm negotiating for those again. So the thing is, like, you have, in the law, you basically have the tabulation, I don't know if it makes sense, but you have, like the criteria, sub-criteria, and everything, but without any number. And then we go, all stakeholders, we were basically 2 environmental NGO against like maybe 15 producers, and we go at the ministry and we just go through each point. We're just like, okay, for those, and it's a negotiation, so they basically come with numbers, and we're just like, yeah, but no, this is not possible, anyway, it's very long, it takes a lot of time, and that is why, on the one hand, it's nice, because we know exactly, at least at HOP, as we're part of the negotiation, we know exactly what index is relevant and which one is not. For example, the one on TV is not, we're not really happy about it, but some others were just like, okay, it's great. So we can say that, but on the other hand, there is a huge problem in terms of representativity, knowing that we're 2 NGO against like 15 producers. So yeah, it is like each product has a negotiation for each criteria, sub-criteria, etc. So it takes basically 1 year to get 1 score.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, the manufacturers are scoring the products themselves, and then they're posting it publicly. So if someone else wants to review that score and disagree, we can do that. And at iFixit, we do that behind the scenes with manufacturers. They'll come to us and say, hey, we scored with it, and we think we're a 7, and we run in the math, and we're like, actually, you're a 5, guys. You did it wrong. So that's a conversation that is ongoing and needs more third-party enforcement. And so if you want to get involved and you want to do independent scoring and send the report to HOP, I think they'll send it to the French government for you.
Thank you. Another question in the back.
Skov. Oh, I think there's some feedback here from Repair Cafe Denmark. I think there's something we're missing when we had this round of hope. I know that I could put Lily talking for half an hour about Fnac Darty. It is very interesting to see that we have more and more companies that see things our way and start to include some kind of repairability and stuff. So that, I think, is a part of the hope. We should not start a debate on that now, but I have a very precise question, and I don't know if it's Cristina or Lily, but is this new EU index marking, does that mean that the French index is now illegal? Because we had the discussion, have had it for years, that in the French index we have included the price of the spare parts, but the wise guys in Brussels, they have decided that that doesn't mean anything for the repair index. I don't quite agree. So is now the marking that is introduced by the EU, does that mean that the French-Belgium index is illegal?
Short answer, there will be more in the session about the EU policy.
Very short answer. I'm playing the law professor, even though I'm not. EU legislation take precedence over national legislation. So indeed, where there is an EU index, the EU index takes precedence, will have to be displaced. So on smartphones and tablets, indeed, it will be the case. But it is a limitation of the EU index that it doesn't take into consideration the price of spare parts. And that's one of our biggest grievances. And everybody hates me in Brussels because I don't stop bothering them with it. If you want to know more, the session is at 11:30.
Next question.
Hello, I'm Murray. I run a repair facility in Suffolk, repair shed. I hate to ask this question, but how does the UK stand vis-a-vis EU legislation?
I'll try to answer representing Restart's view on this, and the UK really wants to make it happen now compared to years ago when there was no momentum. but it's lagging behind. And we hope that the excitement in this room and all the positive examples will help turn our repair and reuse declaration that has now 74 or 5 MPs that have endorsed it, and in total 500 groups around the country, turn this in legislation. But we'll talk about that this afternoon in a session about the future of right to repair in the UK. But it stands to benefit from the design improvements that have been approved by the EU. Next question. Keep it very short. We have time for 3 more. You choose.
Hello everyone, my name is Joshua, and apart from doing my own side project in the right to repair, I work full-time in sustainability, and one of the things I saw in my full-time job as a result of the tariffs coming from the new administration was a delay in sustainability reporting requirements for the EU country. And I open this question up to all the panelists, but with the new tariffs, do you see a sort of a delay in right to repair in your respective countries as a result of, you know, keeping your local businesses competitive? Thank you.
Maybe let's take the other 2 and then we do responses to all them.
Okay, it's fast. Hi, I'm Marta from Repair Café Lisbon, Portugal. Actually, I have a question for Mathew. So many African countries are recipients of our e-waste, and I wanted just your opinion about, I think, this complex relationship, because we send our e-waste, and for you it's a way of business for many people, but then it's also an environmental and a social problem. So just to get your view on this issue, please.
Good question.
Let's take the last one.
So hi, my name is Purna. Okay. So I'm from Repair Cafe, Bengaluru, India, and it is more of an observation than a question. Basically, I see that this right to repair is very comprehensive. It is not about the fight which has to be fought in the parliament or in the constitution books and so on. There is a big chunk of people who are involved, like the consumers, we are involved because we are fighting our own battles. You know, when I go to the market and they say, hey, it's a substandard spare part that you have to use. It's your luck if it works. I mean, finally it comes back to my luck. So this is the kind of thing. So I feel this is to all the panelists, probably we need to make it more aware to the people, because whether you're getting what success you're getting, but it is still a very, very important movement in the history, and probably it will impact everyone, and people will understand it. Like, even if whatever progress it is making, people will understand it. I mean, so I don't know if I'm clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And finally, Jude.
I was just interested to pick up on Carl's point that you said the USB-C, you know, with iPhones, for example, had sort of picked up. Coming from a design background, I almost think it's worth, just as an observation, saying R&D can take 2 to 3 years on a good day. So I guess just to reflect that, keeping the pressure on companies, they might actually be working harder than the public realize. So I guess to follow on from that, just what are some of the things that you can do, not just consumer facing, but possibly to sort of inform design teams with strategic documentation that would help accelerate R&D. And I guess really quickly, a very quick elephant in the room, what can we do in repair cafes to get more women involved? Because the statistics are what they are.
Very quick answers, if we can, because we need to close.
Okay, I think I can start to respond. Okay,
Yes, it's not only the EU that sends e-waste to African countries. The UK and many other, countries also do send the e-waste to many African countries. And one funny thing is that these countries, they don't take responsibility of this e-waste when they send. Yes, I understand it's, in one way, it's sort of bridging like a gap to solve some other problems. For example, in Africa, the need for technological devices, it's high, right? And not many people have access to tech devices, right? And sending computers or sending mobile phones to someone in Africa, it's a way of support in one way, but when looking at what specifically are you sending, what is the age of this device? Is it something that is going to take time before it gets broken or not? And secondly, are you offering a support for this person who is going to use this? Yes, you have sent it and you're already free. That I'm free, I've already escaped by sending the trust to another country. But do you know how this person is dealing with this waste when it's already in their hands? No. So I think there's the need for countries that are sending this trust or this e-waste to other countries to think of supporting the recipient of these devices in order to manage this e-waste, right? So that you can be accountable of what you are sending out, and you can receive even a feedback of how it's helping one or whether it's harming more, right? So this is, I think, something that the European Union, the UK, and many others should take into account of what they are sending to many people, or to not only to Africa or to other, countries within the globe. That whenever you're sending these electronic devices, think of how it's going to be maintained, and how the data should be also documented of what happens, what is the end results of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anthony yeah.
Thank you. Just a very quick response to the tariff question, and this is coming from a Canadian perspective, so apologies. But I think there are common experiences with tariffs, and what we're seeing in Canada is actually an invigoration of the right to repair because of tariffs, because essentially, most repair is local, and we're talking about commercial, industrial equipment, and publicly procured assets for, like, for example, the military or other infrastructure. We're seeing governments become increasingly aware of their own need of a right to repair as the result of tariffs. So we're seeing sort of maybe a different dynamic than tariffs, I guess, suppressing our ability to legislate here. Is almost the opposite in Canada.
So answering the question from India about parts and design, we are working closely with OEMs. So iFixit is working directly with Microsoft and Motorola and Google and others on product design. I got to, you may have seen we've been very critical of the Microsoft Surface designs over the years. We gave them a 0 or a 1 out of 10. I got to go to Redmond, Washington and sit down across the table from the product designer, and he said, "Hey, Kyle, thanks a lot for the 0. I was like, well, it's kind of hard to fix. He said, yeah, no, we deserved it. And they systematically improved and they made it better. But to your point, it's a 3-year design cycle. So we are in the room with them. We are talking regularly. I was at an event with PIRG in New York last year, and a reporter asked Google, they said, hey, you've got repair information for your phones. What about your watch? How come your watch sucks? And the Google folks are like, well, it's a journey, blah, blah, blah. Now, a year later, they just released their new watch, and they designed it to be repairable. We haven't scored it yet, but it'll be 5 or something like that. So it's much better than a 0, which is where it was before. So this is a journey. We have to keep the pressure up. It is a multi-year cycle. We have new adhesives, and right now is the critical moment for smartphone design, as we have the new European regulation that says batteries need to be easily removable. Broadly, they are not. All of you see this every day. So the next generation of phones coming out over the next year, we're going to see, and we should be very vocal if we see designs coming out where the manufacturer says the battery is removable and complies, and you all think it does not. Let's call that out.
Thank you, everyone. And in closing, I just would like to remind that thanks to all the efforts of people in this room and in the communities that you serve, there's many products that are not the products of tomorrow that people focus on, but continuing to use the things that we already have is really the answer in many cases. So keep fighting, keep pushing, and enjoy the next break. I would like to just thank all our panelists and hand it over to James for a few logistical announcements about what's next. Thank you.